And so I really appreciate that some of the stuff that I'm going to share, I'm going to ask everyone just to come in with like just an openness. That's the best way I can explain it. Because I'm going to step into the more spiritual side of existence, spiritual side of living with ourselves, living with our dogs. Because from a wellness perspective, which is my passion, my desire, my drive, my mission for this life on earth, of how we coexist from a wellness perspective with ourselves, with our dogs, and how we're in harmony and in this beautiful relationship of oneness with our animal friends. And so when we look at wellness, it's like a complete circle. It's a full circle of complete wellness. And so these days, there is so much emphasis on the physical health, physical nourishment of our dogs, emotional nourishment, and mental nourishment. It's sure becoming like a really important topics as well, of how we support our dogs in terms of their mental health, through stress, through stimulation, through enrichment, obviously the emotional lives of our animal friends, and then the physical health, everything from the locomotion if a dog has a physical ailment, to a dog that has disease, a dog that maybe has cancer or intolerances, and all those other things. And then what kind of gets palmed off in this wellness wheel, in this wellness circle, is they're like, oh, there's a spiritual side, but I don't know, I don't really feel comfortable in talking about that. I don't really know what it means. People are going to think I'm like crazy talking about it. And I'm like that. I'll be that crazy one. I'm happy to talk about it. And so there's an element of almost like what gives me authority. Like there's an element of when we are supporting our dogs, it's absolutely imperative to explore their physical side, explore what does it mean to be a canine? What does it mean to be a dog? How do they show up in our world? How do they exist in this modern day life, but existing still and experiencing still as a canine, and how we support them in that way? And so that's really important. So just bear in mind, that's how I want to start this talk, that I'm not excluding the mental, emotional, physical. They're just part of the wheel, right, to wellness, of ecosystem health and stability. But when we're dropping into this place of oneness, for me, what's really important is like we need to start talking about the wider consciousness, and it's something that I've been exploring for many, many years, and something that just is very, very rich, that we should be exploring and talking about. So this is what this talk is going to be on today. And let me just quickly just mute everybody again as we have some newcomers arrive, just so I'm not distracted myself. There we go. And so I'm really aware, right, in some of the work that I do, and some of the ways that I work with dogs and their guardians and also professionals, is that I'm just so aware that we are more and more and more creating a community, whether we are dog professionals and dog guardians or just dog guardians. We're creating this community that is kind of expanding and growing, but from a place that I would refer to as a distortion, a place that is really about there is right and wrong, there is good and bad, there is judgment and criticism. And so what I want to do is create an expansive community for dog professionals and dog guardians that's about this wider consciousness. What is the wider consciousness of being here, of existing with the dogs that we chose to live with us, because on some level we chose, okay, this dog's going to come into my life. Oh wow, like I wasn't expecting to have another dog, but this one's appeared. And so there's an element that we chose, but on a wider conscious perspective, there's absolutely no coincidences of the things that are showing up in our life, including the dogs that we chose to coexist with. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that later on. But the first thing that I want to really drop into is this spiritual existence, this soul, spiritual, whatever word we want to put into it. And when I talk about spiritual here, this is not religion, right? That's something very different. Spiritual is how we access the wider consciousness. Spiritual is how we access the soul that we are, with the reminder and realization that we are a soul in a physical body. So you are a soul in a physical body that is human right now. Your dog is a soul that is in the physical body of a canine right now. And how we're having these experiences in these different ways, still in that place of oneness, that place of wholeness. And so when I look at wellness, my first priority is exploring what wellness is. And for me, wellness is wholeness. It's oneness, it's unity, it's interconnectedness. There is no separation. When we have a pull on one thing, that has a pull on the wider consciousness as a whole. And so when we drop into this understanding, appreciation, feeling into wellness, wholeness, oneness, unity, how we are existing as one with our animal friends, with our dogs. And now that can start to have this beautiful spiritual experience that we can have with our dogs. And one of the things that I'm reminded of time and time again in some of the more esoteric work that I do with dogs, when I'm looking at when I'm exploring their soul, really. I'm sitting with their soul and what their soul wants to share, is that as a collective they share with me like, hey, non-human animals, and particular dogs or cats or horses, those domestic animals that we choose to live with, or they have chosen to live with us, is they're basically here to show us how to be happy and also how to heal. And this is what I'm kind of getting into when we look at the wider consciousness. I really want us to have this understanding, of course, we are here to learn, explore, and support our dogs for any ailments that they have, whether it's emotional distress, emotional traumas, emotional disturbances, physical challenges, physical diseases, mental stability that is needed. But from that perspective, if we are also not addressing the spiritual health of any animal, that animal is in what's called spiritual malnourishment. And so again, everything has a pull on everything else. So when animal is in spiritual malnourishment, that also has a pull on the physical nourishment, the emotional nourishment, and mental nourishment of an individual. And because we are so close with our dogs, and because everything is one, then our own consciousness, our own spiritual nourishment or malnourishment has an effect on our dogs. And so there is another reason why, I guess there is another reason why, but there is another reason of existence with our animal friends, and that is actually to look at our own self. When we look at our own self, it allows us to tap into the wider consciousness. And when we tap into the wider consciousness of self, we actually tap into the intelligence of all of life, including our dogs. And so in my last share, I talked, I think I did in the opening, I talked about when we break something down, when we break our physical body down into its smallest fundamental part, when we can't break it down any further, everything that exists, from the smallest particle of soil to the giant redwood tree, everything is vibration and frequency. And when we tap into the wider consciousness, we tap into the vibration and frequency of all of life, which is the intelligence. So it's not intellect. This is quite limiting in itself, and no other animal, humans are the only animals that exist from this intellect. But we have this wider intelligence that we can all tap into. And this is what I want to talk about today, because when we tap into this state, which we can all do, it really opens up this beautiful and deeper and more expansive connection, coexistence, and relationship with our dogs, where we start to be with them in a different way. And so the first way that I'm going to start sharing that is by looking at the spiritual connection of our coexistence with our dogs. So like I've already shared, there is absolutely, for me, I'm so into that place of synchronicity, of there are no such things as coincidences. Things happen whether we know it, whether we don't know it, whether we can explain it, whether we don't understand it. Things are happening in this wider consciousness, and that's happening all around us, whether we are conscious of it or unconscious of it. And that is also the spiritual connection, the agreement that we have with our dogs of, we may have chosen the animal that we coexist with. It may have been handed to us through a family member or a rescue or whoever. But from a spiritual soul perspective, we are here to have this soul journey with this beautiful non-human animal to allow us to open up and tap into the wider consciousness that all non-human animals are already existing from, already experiencing in. And so from that perspective, when we kind of work with any animal, whether we are working with it with our own dogs or a client, we can start to have this understanding of, what is the dog trying to teach me? What is a behavior that is affecting my own emotional response? And so with that, one of the things that I always share, right, when someone says to me, oh, my dog's so naughty, my dog's really bad, my dog's just not doing something that I expect, I'm like, do you know what? Your dog's not doing anything wrong. Like, your dog is just behaving. Behavior is behavior, right? Whether, like, when an animal is behaving, they're being innocent, they're being honest, they're being authentic. They're basically going, I'm just expressing how I feel. They don't have that knowing of whether we understand it, we like it, we don't like it. They're just expressing how they feel. And so even from that perspective, sometimes, often a lot of the times, we can get frustrated with our animal friends, our dogs, because actually what we want unconsciously, whether we know it consciously or unconsciously, that it's like, wow, do you know what? I wish I could be as authentic as you. I wish I could just be as honest as you, without kind of any fear that comes through of, oh, what will someone else think? Or am I right? Or am I wrong? Or someone might laugh at me, or am I embarrassed? And really stepping away from all of that. And so that's really what our dogs are showing up for ourselves, of how we can become just as pure and authentic and as honest as they are. And maybe we'll talk about that later on. But when we look at it in terms of when a dog is doing something, when a dog is behaving in a way that creates what I refer to as a strong emotional charge, like a dense, heavy emotional charge in us, then that gets to be a great reflection of how we are feeling about ourselves. So it might be, in fact, I'll invite you to think of a time where your dog showed a behavior that created a dense emotional response in yourself. So anger, impatience, frustration, embarrassment, stress, even like judgment towards the dog, like anything like that. And just feel into it a moment of like, oh yeah, well, my dog, I love my dog, but yeah, sometimes I get really impatient or I get irritated, or I don't know, I just want my dog to be perfect. All these things that are basically conditioning, right, of how we think we should or shouldn't be. And so when we think about that dense emotional charge, when our dog is showing whatever behavior that creates that, that gets to be a beautiful reflection. That gets to be a beautiful mirror of, on a soul level, what the dog is highlighting to us of what we need to explore within ourselves. So where we have got anger, it's like, wow, where is it? And what is this teaching me about myself, of why I'm angry about myself? Where we have embarrassment or judgment, it's like, wow, where in myself am I holding that embarrassment or judgment? And so there's this beautiful reflection, this beautiful mirror that often we are unconscious of, that we can't see. And so that's why we project it onto the dog, right? Oh, my dog's just being naughty, my dog's being bad, I want my dog to be doing this and not doing that. Well, I really want us to step out of that. There is no right or wrong, because actually in this moment of moments, you and your dog are already perfect. I really want everyone to understand that in this moment of moments, you and your dog, in fact, everything is already perfect. And so stepping out of this conditioning of a mindset and really from this place coming into the soul, coming into a soul set of nothing is right or wrong. This is an experience that I'm here to learn from, having a curiosity of, what is it that I am to learn here? And stepping out, when we talk about learning, stepping out of the why. So in a lot of the work that I do, people will say to me like, why is this? Why is that? Why? And when we exist into this wider consciousness, we don't exist from the why, because again, the why is a very limited, linear, kind of controlling conditioning of the mind of receiving an answer that makes sense, that we expect, that we want to hear, that we believe. So it's kind of totally breaking away and unraveling any belief system that we may have, and also starting to explore what belief systems that we hold and starting to step into having an experience. So then we can start to go, wow, do you know what? Yeah, when my dog is doing a certain behavior, I actually get really impatient. Okay, well, where do you hold that impatience about yourself, and where does that come from? There's this beautiful expression that I use all the time of as within, so without, that nothing outside of us should affect our within. But when we are truly at peace with ourselves and truly like, wow, and not from an egotistical place at all, it's just like, wow, I love myself because I hold unconditional love for myself and others. I am compassionate, I am understanding. So when we are solid in ourself, nothing outside of us affects us to create that dense, heavy emotional charge. Of course, we can feel loss, we can feel empathy, but it's this distortion, these distorted emotions that I'm talking about. And so when we start to step into these, it's like, wow, yeah, where does that impatience come from? Or, I do get angry when my dog is doing this behavior. Then again, it's information for ourselves of go, wow, where do I hold anger in myself, and where does that come from? So there's a beautiful mirror, this beautiful reflection, because everything is vibration and frequency. And so as our dogs so do as non-human animals, no non-human animal have limiting belief systems and self-limiting doubts. They do not exist from a belief system of this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, this should be this way, this should be that way. But as young children, we start to develop these that create these belief systems that we carry on into as adulthood, that we then start to actually place on our own children if we are adults and have children. But we do exactly the same with our animal friends that we coexist with. So as an example, with our dogs. And so we take a moment to feel into that of like, I know what it was like when I was a kid, right? And it's almost like, wow, I was kind of being spoken to like I was a dog with all these rules and regulations, but not once being asked at a certain age, like, what is right for you? How does this make you feel? Like, are you okay with this? And it might even be something simple of like, oh, ma'am, I don't want to wear this grey jumper. Can I wear the black? Just put that jumper on. Yeah, I know, but I prefer, no, just stop it. Just, I'm telling you to put that on, so put it on. I'm like, all right, okay, I kind of prefer the black because this one's a bit itchy and I don't know, I just don't feel very comfortable in it. So not having a choice, right? Or it can even be just not being asked at all of, right, this is what we're doing today. Without being asked, like, is this right for you? Is this okay for you? How does it make you feel? And when we kind of think of that, like think of just one time or all the times as children when we just weren't asked, is this okay for you? Does this make you feel safe? Does it make you feel afraid? Like, you might be fine with it, but I'm just curious to know, how does this make you feel? We kind of know, like, for once, I wish someone asked me, I wish someone noticed me, I wish someone just said to me, like, is this okay for you, Isla, or how does this make you feel? Or do you know what, you choose? Do you want to wear the green jumper, the black jumper, the grey jumper? Like, what feels right for you? Because at that level, our dogs already know, and at that level, our dogs already can share, and anyone can do this. It's not like, well, it is kind of magic and mystery, but we're all magical, mystical beings. So I'll get into that later. But stepping into the, like, oh, so when my dog is showing a behavior, or even with clients, right, when we're speaking to guardians of dogs, or cats, horses, whatever animal we coexist with, then one way that we can step into is an exploration of, hang on a minute, we get so focused on the animal, right? Someone rings us, or it might be even with our own dogs, if my dog's doing this and not doing that and doing the other. Just taking a moment to go, okay, how does this make me feel? And so what is this telling me about myself? And so it might be a case of, just pick an example, someone might ring me and go, oh, right, I've got a problem with my dog because my dog's not doing this and I want it to be fixed. And so one of the things that I look at is actually not fixing anything. I'm like, cool, if that is the end product, then that's brilliant. But let's just step away again from that mindset of, we've got so conditioned into believing that we can fix everything, that there is something wrong, we can fix and change and heal. And that's why in a lot of the work, actually, and even now, I'm changing, like, a lot of people like, Ali, can I have a healing session? Or can my dog have a healing session? And I'm like, do you know what? Like, we've got to be careful with words, because with words, right, there is labeling and therefore conditioning. So someone might have the assumption or belief system, oh, Isla does healing, therefore she can heal, she can take this away. Now, when we exist in the place of the wider consciousness, it's not necessarily to take something away, it's to have an experience and exploration of what we can learn here. And so healing can sometimes give someone the belief system and mindset of, this can be taken away. And when we look at a challenge for me, or the dog is doing something I don't want it to do, I'm like, well, exactly, the dog might be doing something that's very right and feels good for them, but it's just something that you don't want the dog to do. What's to say that that is right or that is wrong? But for argument's sake, a client might ring me and, okay, my dog is doing something that I don't want it to do, so I want it to stop, I want it to be fixed, I don't want to do it anymore. And so we can have the conversation of, okay, so when your dog is doing this particular behavior, how does it make you feel? Well, I get really annoyed. Okay, so where does that annoyance come from? Oh, well, it comes from my dog. And I'm like, no, you're getting, your dog in that moment is making you feel annoyed, but where does that annoyance come from? And they might be like, oh, well, it's because it's doing something that it shouldn't. Okay, so where is that belief system coming from? Where's that belief coming from if the dog is doing something it shouldn't? Oh, well, I read it in a book, or my neighbour told me, or a professional told me, or I saw it in a TV programme. Okay, but our dogs are a collective variety of life in themselves. Our dogs are individuals, so that's why it's beautiful to have all these different behavioural responses that a dog is showing. It might even be something simple of, oh, well, a dog is eating grass because the dog is unwell. A dog can eat grass for probably 500, if not more, different reasons, because the dog is an individual. So even as professionals, and I'll say this myself, like, I will show up every day and go, I know nothing. Like, I'm here as a professional, I know nothing, because even as a professional that has a lot of knowledge that is always growing and always expanding, I'm still making a guess. It might be a very good guess based on the knowledge that I have, but I'm still kind of guessing unless I go, do you know what? Why don't we just ask the consciousness of the dog? Why don't we just sit with the dog or the animal that we coexist with or the animals that we work with and connect with them in this intelligence, which I'll get into in a moment. So going back to this client, they'd be like, oh, well, yes, I read it, or my neighbour said it, or a professional said it, so my dog shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just assume for a moment that your dog is just behaving in this moment, and through that behaviour, All your dog is doing is behaving. Your dog is letting you know how they feel in that moment in time. That's what behavior is. So I'll ask that question again. Where does that annoyance come from? Oh, well, I'm embarrassed. Okay, so this is a different emotional charge now. So tell me more about this embarrassment. Where's this embarrassment? Are you embarrassed yourself? You're embarrassed by your dog? Oh, well, no, I'm just embarrassed about what somebody else may think. Aha! Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So why are you embarrassed about what someone else may think? Oh, well, I just think, I'm not good enough. And so this is the core, right? For most of us are walking around with the belief that there is something inherently wrong with us. And so that's why I will go back to what I shared before. We and our dogs and everything in this moment, in moments and moments, are already perfect. But that gets to be something to look at. In that moment, through that dog's behavior, the dog's behavior is reflecting back at us a dense emotional charge that we feel about ourselves that we need to work through. And it's not plain sailing all the time, or most of the time. But as we fall into then the wider consciousness of, wow, my dog is actually showing up as a message for me and things to explore for myself of these heavy emotional charges that I can now work through and release, we step into the wider consciousness. And when we step into the wider consciousness, we then step into the intelligence of all of life that we are part of, our dogs are part of, everything is a part of. And from there, it's not that we stop caring, we just care from a wider perspective. Of like, wow, I've worked through that annoyance and embarrassment of what other people may think of me. And that's gone. Like, I feel so great in who I am now, that my focus now is my dog still showing this behavior? And sometimes the dog stops because the dog's like, great, I've been telling you all this time that, like, just get rid of this embarrassment already. Or I've been doing this behavior all the time to say, look, you're amazing, you're awesome, like, believe that, live from that moment, live from that place. And so when we do, our dogs go, oh, thank goodness, we can relax now into feeling comfortable, feeling safe, feeling relaxed. Or it might be, wow, I've done all of that, and, the issue isn't an issue anymore. My dog, I now accept and have acceptance and appreciation of my dog is just behaving, and that doesn't bother me so much. It might bother my neighbour and that person's judging me, but wow, I don't judge anymore. And so again, as within, so without, where we have judgment of another, where we have judgment on a dog, where we have judgment on anybody, it's because we hold judgment of ourselves. And so this is the beautiful spiritual journey and connection on one level that we have with our animals, with our canine friends, with our dogs that we're coexisting with. Of, hang on a moment, how are they showing in that moment of a mirror, of a reflection of how we feel about ourselves, from a place of distortion, from a place that is a truth in one way, but not the truth of living a life from, for me, of oneness, living a life of absolute acceptance and absolute purity of love and acceptance. And then we can start to work through that to go, okay, then, as I said before, it's not that we stop caring, it's that we care from a wider perspective. And so what we can then start to do is drop into this place of dropping the belief systems of what is right or wrong or should or shouldn't be, and start to go, okay, how can I now go on a journey of experience with my dog? And so when we go on a journey of experience with our dogs, we step into that intelligence. So again, it's not intellect, it's intelligence. We are, imagine for a moment, so being a human, we are made up of all these trillions of cells, and all these trillions of cells are specialized, everything from like blood all the way up to skin, are all connected. It's not separate, it's all connected. And there are all these specialized cells that make us a unit, that make us a physical being. But then as a physical being that is complete in this way, I am but a cell in like the cosmos of all of life. I am but a cell in the intelligence of life. And when we access it in this way, it's accessing the vibration, the wave, like the electricity almost, just the movement of all that is interconnected in this way, including our dogs. And so that gets us onto the next place of living consciously with our animal friends, living it from this place of wider consciousness. Of course, what we want is, of course, we want our dogs because we love them so much and we know they don't live as long as what we do. So we want them to be happy all the time. We want them to be kind of stress-free, relaxed, not in pain, not in discomfort, not any physical challenges or diseases or distresses. But we can't fix everything because, of course, from that perspective, we are on this learning journey. So we are on this learning journey to go, wow, like, so 2020. So, okay, 2020 was a bit of a bad year for most people, right? if 2020 is going to give an animal cancer, of course there's going to be cancer in the ass. I mean, come on. So my dog Tunkasila got cancer in her anal sac. I mean, I didn't even know it was a thing, but actually it's a thing, right? And I'm like that. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know you could get cancer in the anal sac. I've never worked with a dog with cancer. I've never worked with a dog with cancer in this way. What can I learn from this? How can I understand more about support, what I can use, how aggressive this cancer is, how it affects the body, and have this experience with my dog of just also experience with her of where is she at and how she feels and what is it that she needs. And so going back to like that example of, you know, parents, excuse me, I have hair in my mouth, parents or adults in our community, not asking how we feel, or because we're the child, right, telling us what to do. Like, you're the child here, so you just do as I say. I'm the adult. But the reality is, unfortunately, this myriad, this like this wound up, coiled ball of string of when we were children, and not all of us, but for most of us, when we were children, the parents or adults in our community that we had, whether it's teachers, whether it's family members, whether it's friends of the family, whether it's community leaders, really they're also operating from a pain, from a wounded child living in an adult's body trying to make decisions for themselves, and also then the children around them. And so when we are existing from that place ourselves, we don't stop to consider how our dogs may be feeling. Even if they look fine about doing something, it might be like, do you know what? Like, okay, so I love going to the beach, and so I kind of, you know, I live on my own and I got a dog to go to the beach with me. But have I for a moment stopped to go, do you like getting in the car and going to the beach? Is that something that is okay for you? Is it something that you just kind of, you're like, it's all right, like I'd prefer to do something else, but it's okay? Do you actually hate it but don't express it? Do you hate it and do express it, but I'm going to make you change? And so we're stepping out of this mindset of fixing a belief system of like, you need to do something that I want you to do, because we know how that feels, or hopefully we know how that feels when we were children ourselves, and go, hang on, this is a partnership now, this is a relationship. What feels right for my dog? What is right for my dog? And so we're going to have a little bit of exploration how we step into this wider consciousness in a moment. But going back to that story of my dog getting cancer, and I don't even know if any of you know him, Petra and Janek may know, I'm not sure. But just on the 17th of March, I lost Tunkasila, so Tunkasila passed. She passed because she had tumours, she had cancer, and that wasn't going away, it wasn't getting any better. Was I once in that place of like, I will save you, I will fix you, I will heal you? No. I was just like, hey, if that's what happens, then that's also what's meant to happen. But when we are on this spiritual journey, the understanding also is that for the animal's soul journey, when we step into this wider consciousness, when we start to have an understanding, or maybe a really strong understanding of this spiritual journey, this soul that we are and the soul that our dogs are, when I'm working with someone that already gets that, they get it for themselves, but they might be like, oh, I just feel so bad because, you know, I over vaccinated my dog, or I did this because I thought it was the right thing to do, but now my dog's suffering as a result, and I just can't get over the guilt. Right? But you know what? Your dog is also a soul, and therefore, as a soul, your dog also agreed to have this experience with you. So it's not all on you. Your dog agreed to go, at this time, in this moment, we will coexist in this relationship, have this experience that we agreed together when we were souls before we became dense. And the dog soul also agreed with that to go, and so for the next dog that you have, or the next cat that you have, or the next journey that you have, you will now have more knowledge. And yeah, it's not a sacrifice, but it's like, I'm the one that agreed to that as well. So that's why we step out of these dense emotional charges, these dense emotional responses. So our dogs are also on this soul journey of what they're experiencing as a soul, they also experience to have with you. And that doesn't mean to say that the physical body may not be kind of in distress, right? So again, for me, the example that I can give you, because it's a very recent example, and it's a very close example, is with Tunkasila. Like, her physical body was failing. Her physical body was not feeling so good. When we tap into the soul of that animal, the intelligence, the wider consciousness of that being, it's like, wow, you're doing so much. You are sending me so much love. You are supporting me unconditionally with so much love, with so much help, with so much care. Like, I'm good. I'm at peace. My soul is strong. yeah, sure, my physical body is a bit screwed and it's failing, and that's what's going to happen. It's inevitable. But when we connect to that intelligence, we can connect to the soul of the animal to know what it is they need, to know what it is what they're feeling, regardless of like looking at the physical body. And it might be so one of my clients, their dog needed their leg amputated, and of course the guardian was hysterical, right? Oh my goodness, like imagine we'd have an operation, we'd wake up one day with like minus a limb, how much trauma we'd go through, like, oh my goodness, like my poor dog, and how's my dog going to understand, oh my goodness. But when we connected with his soul, when we connected to the intelligence, the wider consciousness, he was like, yeah, I got another 3 legs, guys, what's your freaking problem? So it's the beauty, right? Again, our dogs, from this wider conscious perspective of, yes, we are here to support them, to help them, to allow them to feel safe and comfortable and also be happy in the modern day world. But because everything that shows up in our life is showing up as an experience for us as well, everything that shows up in our life is showing up as support for us of what wounds do we carry, how do we feel about ourselves, and how can we release those dense, heavy emotions that make us feel not good, make us feel in fear, make us feel panic, make us feel disconnected, make us feel everyone's better than us, which is just not true. It's just not true. And so breaking down these belief systems and breaking down these wounds, that is what our dogs are also mirroring in us as well. And that can be absorbed into them, because they're sponges, right? I mean, they are sponges in terms of they observe, but they are energetic sponges of what we are carrying. Often it comes out of our body because we're carrying so much. And so it's absorbed into our dogs. And really everything that I'm sharing here is from a place of non-judgment. It's just an experience, right? It's a journey and an experience. It's not to say, oh my goodness, guys, if you're stressful, then that's going into your dogs and you should feel really bad. I do not operate from that place. Because again, as souls, our dogs also agreed to have that experience with us. And so when we're in that place of the wider consciousness and exploring our dog's spiritual health and spiritual nourishment and our own spiritual nourishment, and then a dog is still exposed with a challenge that we may say of, wow, like a dog may be struggling to cope at a particular moment in time, which we may share as reactivity. For me, reactivity is like, yeah, the dog is reacting because they're struggling to cope at that moment in time. It's not that they're a mean dog, a nasty dog, an awful dog. It's like they're letting their physical body is going, guys, I got a problem right now. That sometimes that just dissolves. Sometimes it massively improves, or sometimes it's still there because that's the experience that dog needs. That's the experience that the dog is going to have. And yes, of course, with that we can support the animal, but also looking at really being honest with ourselves to go, hang on, at what point am I doing this from the place of self? At what point am I doing this in the place of ego? Not from a place of necessarily being mean and controlling, but I will achieve a good result. I will make sure this dog will have reactivity no more. I will make sure that this dog will be good with the baby. I can change it, I can change it, I can change it. And of course, there are millions of examples where that happens. But if it becomes that reflection, if it becomes that place of, I need to achieve this to fuel my own ego, I need to do this to make myself feel good, then see that as a reflection itself, right? You don't need anything outside of you to make yourself feel good when you feel good. And therefore, sometimes the effect of that is when we are putting the pressure on ourselves, we put the pressure on our dogs. The reality is we are so desperate to fix ourselves, but it's like, I don't even know where to start, or it's too painful, or like, oh my goodness, like I'm just a mess. But I can try and fix my dog. So there's all these reflections that come through. We're so focused on trying to fix our dogs because we want to fix ourselves. We're so focused on putting pressure on our dogs because we put so much pressure on ourselves. But when we fall into this wider consciousness of existence, of appreciation, of intelligence, we go, wow, what is right for you? What is right for me? How does that make you feel? How am I exploring these dense emotional charges in myself? And as I fall into those and allow them in their own way and own time to just fall away from me, how does that dog change? How does that dog start to interact with me differently? How do any challenges, disturbances also fall away? And if they don't, because they're not always going to, how on one level do I accept that as a, hey, that's the dog's also spiritual journey with me that we're to experience so I can learn and explore and expand. But then also, how can I go deeper with how else can I support the dog to the point of, do you know what? Yeah, this dog isn't going to overcome an emotional challenge, a physical challenge, a mental challenge, but that's also okay. So we step into that place of acceptance, which actually makes the dog's life and our life much easier as well. And I think I talked about last time, I'm sure I did, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong, and I can talk about it in the questions if there is one, of then like another soul journey with our dogs is the journey itself, in terms of soul malnourishment can happen in loads of, like, soul malnourishment can happen from birthing trauma, soul malnourishment can happen for some dogs that are taken away from mother, because that's inevitably like stress in itself. Some soul malnourishment can come through how we speak to our dogs. So when we are tapping into wider consciousness is wider consciousness. Consciousness is conscious in every way. The words that we speak, because words hold, and I'm sure I talked about this last time, words hold a vibration. Please remember that. Words hold a vibration. Are we speaking good words about ourselves? Are we saying good things? Are we having good thoughts about ourselves? Are we having good thoughts and words about our dogs? And so even from that perspective, I'm like, be conscious of the name that you give your dog, because a name is a word, and a word holds a vibration. So there's power in a word, there's power in a name, and that even itself can affect a dog's behavior, affect how a dog feels. I've kind of lost my train of thought. Yeah, so when we are in that place of wider consciousness, it's, as I say, just also being conscious of the words that we speak. Are we speaking good words? Are we speaking kind words? Like a recent client of mine, the husband, was just like, I'm not speaking to the dog because the dog did this. And he's like, bad boy, and he's a pain in the backside, and I'm like, your dog's really confused. Like, your dog doesn't understand, like, you're not speaking to them. They don't understand that concept. Your dog doesn't understand. Your dog understands the vibration of you're a bad dog and I don't like you. But we can really create this confusion of a push me, pull me. Like, 1 minute you like me, 1 minute you don't. Because we often don't explain to our dogs. Again, like, things weren't explained to us as a child. Like, why did you just explain to me that I was going to go to the doctors and have a needle put in my arm, and sure, it's still going to hurt like hell, but you've explained something to me. Okay, that just kind of makes a little bit more sense. So if I had to take Concealer to the vet, she hates going to the vet, but I would still explain to her, like, sweetheart, we need to go to the vet, you need to have bloods taken, you're not very well, like, this is the only thing we can do, I know you hate it. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to go there. And I'm like, I know, sweetheart, I know you don't want to go there. So do you know what? Whilst we're on that journey, you can release as much as you need to. You can cry, like, how many people, when we're going somewhere where the dog is excited or the dog is distressed, like, shut up, be quiet, no, don't worry. Like, either we get angry and annoyed or we feel really, really bad. It's like, hey, the animal's just expressing, the dog is just expressing, like, right now, like, ma'am, I know exactly the road to the vet. I know what on that road. I don't want to go. Sweetheart, I know you don't want to go, so express that. You're going to be safe. You're going to be nothing bad's going to happen to you. I know you don't like it, but you're going to be safe. I'm here to support you. But still express what you need to express. This is like, as children, we're not like, shut up, be quiet, I don't care, haven't got time. We do this to our dogs as well, which again creates frustration, annoyance. They just also like, just please hear me, like, in some way. Let me be seen. And so soul malnourishment can also come from the place of where a dog has had a soul loss. And soul losses are as wide and varied and vast and unique as everything in life, the variety of life. So there's never a set, like, a soul loss can happen from da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It can happen from deep trauma. It can happen from, I did a soul loss for a dog. I did a soul retrieval very recently for a dog that is a puppy. He had the dew claws removed. And that's not something that the client shared with me, just when I did a soul session with him. He just showed me his paws being held and he was screaming. It was just like, it's still like, it's a best way to describe it is like an echo. It's a vibrational echo that, like, that's still there. And so sometimes when we, again, step into the wider consciousness, we can explore things and tap into things and feel into things that we didn't even think was possible. And so when we step into the wider consciousness, it's classed as the invisible, or it's classed as a non-physical. So we're in the physical world, like, everything is physical, but we can all access the invisible. Like, when you meditate, for those who meditate, you are accessing in parts and moments the invisible. When you dream, you're accessing the invisible. And so what can happen is that we can practice accessing the invisible so we can connect with our dogs. And so we access the invisible and connect with our dogs. We are accessing intuitively. And when we access intuitively, we're coming from a place that is a place that non-human animals know. It's the only place they know. They don't have two. As humans, we have two minds. We have three minds, actually. We have the brain mind, the heart mind, and the body mind. The body is a roadmap to give us information as well. But non-human animals do not have They don't exist from the brain, they exist from the heart. They feel, they respond, they experience from the heart. That's why they're so intuitive. That's why they can't help but like, I just can't help myself. Like, this is how I feel right now. And when we access that place of intuition, it accesses that place of the heart. When we access that place of the heart, it's the soul. And when we access the place of the soul, we step into the wider consciousness that is all of life. We step into that intelligence of life that allows us to feel, see, experience in ways that go beyond what the mind can think, that go beyond what the mind can comprehend, that go beyond a belief system. And this gets to be the most beautiful, like, I just, believe me when I say this, it gets to be the most beautiful experience of knowing and expansion and understanding for you and your own dog, as well as those of you that are professionals with your clients as well, and their dogs. Because it steps us into this place of like, wow, anything is possible, and the way that I receive and feel and experience is possible. I never even thought for a moment like the dog could share this, or even that this would be a problem or concern or confusion. And so really, I mean, an experience I'm going to give you, because it's so close to my heart again, is like, I just on the 17th of March, like 2 weeks on Thursday, I lost my absolute heart dog. Like, I've had many dogs. We did have many dogs. We actually lost one of our dogs in December. 27th of December, we lost our second from last dog, and then we lost Tunkasila just two weeks ago on Thursday. And so, of course, I'm like, whoa, I've lost 2 dogs in quick succession. We are now dogless for the first time, like, in ever. Like, of course, I could go down and like, why? Oh my goodness, losing 2 dogs. Oh my God. But from that wider consciousness, I'm like, do you know what? I'm curious. I'm curious to know as to why my soul was to experience that. Why my soul was to experience 2 dogs passing really close together and 1 dog from cancer, and stepping into that wider consciousness of experience, of acceptance. And also I'm curious to know of like, I've always said like when Tunkasila goes, because she's my absolute heart dog, when she goes, I'm going to be a mess. Like, guys, I'm going to need to take a week off, a month. Like, I don't know how long I need to take off. I'm going to need to take time off. But I didn't. Like, I have heartache, but I have such, like, overriding that is such a deep, strong sense of peace and acceptance and connection still, that I'm like, God, I'm good. I'm really, really good. Because when I sat down with her, she shared with me so much about her life, and so much about even what she wanted for her time to pass. She even shared with me a film that she wanted us to sit down and watch. And that film was so, I was just like, what? Like, there was so many synchronicities in our life. And this is where I want us all to be as dog guardians, animal professionals, is coming more out of here and coming more into here, coming more out of this belief system of this is good, this is bad, I can fix, that is wrong, that is right. And what we feel about ourselves, like, I better do this because what someone else might think, or I better do this because someone else said so, or I better do this because it's what my neighbour's dog does. And step into that place of the soul, stepping in that place of intuition of going, wow, I'm on this journey with my dog, having an what my dog has shown up as an agreement to have this soul experience together. As I step into that wider consciousness and explore, wow, what heavy emotional charges am I holding in myself, and how that affects me, how that affects my dog, how my dog is so beautifully showing up to help me heal from those. Then I can step into, hang on, how does my dog feel? What does my dog want to share with me? So then we start, as I said before, it's not that we stop caring, we just care from that wider perspective. And so with that, I'm going to invite us, we're going to have time for questions in a moment, but I'm going to invite us to step into that place of wider consciousness, of intelligence. Now, this in itself is like, it's a big teachings that I teach and many other people teach, but just to get a glimpse of it, because anybody can do it. And of course, from a mindset, right? Maybe some of you, maybe all of you, maybe none of you, but it's really coming out, well, I can't do it. Like, we can all do it. It's just practice. It's just like going to the gym. If we go to the gym once in a blue moon, not going to see any difference. But if we practice, it becomes us. It blends with us. And it's stepping just like we are an animal, right? So just like non-human animals, they exist, experience, live, respond from the heart. That's exactly where should we be experiencing from as well. And so I want you to just take a couple of moments. Again, just trust, feel, be intuitive. Just whatever comes to you straight away, just feel into, so recognize that I said feel, not think, feel into something you maybe like to ask your dog. And it can be really simple as like, oh, what's my dog's favourite colour? It might be, yeah, how does my dog feel about being put into the car going to the beach? It might be, I don't know, just I don't know, like, what has my dog got to share? And when we step into this invisible realm, when we step into this realm of the wider consciousness, the ways that we receive are perfect. The ways that we receive are right for you, which is why we cannot compare, because what is right for you is not going to be right for another. The way that you receive might be like, whoa, I've just literally heard my dog speak to me in like words. But the invisible realm is filled with magic and mystery, so it can be through metaphors, through images, through flowers, through symbols, through codes, through animals, through plants, through food, through taste, through smell, through everything. And so we're then in this soup of wider consciousness, of connecting to the intelligence, not intellect, but intelligence of all of life, including our dogs, and get to have an experience with them in this way, which allows us to step into ourself at the same time out of ourself. And so just feel into a question again. Don't, it might be like, oh my, but there's this, but just the very first one that came through, trust that's the one that wants to be asked. And I'm just going to take you on a little journey. I'm just going to bring in my drum in a moment and just allow, almost like as you hear the drum beat, just allow that drum beat to bring you deeper and deeper and deeper into your heart, and feel like, okay, my heart is just like expanding, 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 and opening into just the cosmos, into like even here, right? Like it looks like there's space. There is no space here. We are connected through the nervous system of the universe. And so therefore you're connected through vibration to your dog. And so feel what just comes in. Again, if nothing comes, then that's also perfect. This is just a little practice, a little experience. And so the first thing we're going to do is actually drop into our heart anyway. And for some of you, this might come really super quick and super easy. Some of you, it might be a little bit longer. But again, there's no need for judgment. We're having an experience here. So again, if judgment starts to come, or if panic starts to come, or everyone will be able to do but me, then that's a message in itself, right? That's the beauty of like, well, hey, why is that showing up for you right now? Okay, so I'm just going to drop into our heart, holding that question that we have that came to us intuitively. And if we'd have like, oh, I don't know, I can't even feel into one, then just trust your dog already from its own spirit, from its own soul. Be like, I know exactly what I'm going to share with you, what I want to send to you, what I want you to receive. But we're just going to kind of drop into that heart for a moment. So just place your hands over your heart and take a nice deep breath in. And just hold the breath so that you can feel your heartbeat stronger in your hands as you're holding that breath. And as you're holding that breath, if you can still do it, really focusing on that question that came to you, throwing it into your heart, starting to breathe out. And just slowing down the breath. Slowing down the heart by slowing down the breath, dropping the shoulders, becoming just like a sack of potatoes. That question that you felt, just speaking it to your heart and seeing your heart sending it to the consciousness of your dog. Just coming to this place of absolute trust, of absolute acceptance, whether you receive or don't receive, just like, hey, just having an experience. Relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the jaw, really slowing down the breath. And it might even be by doing this, your dog may have already changed their behavior. Some may whine, some may dig, some may settle. So allowing them to also respond how they need to respond. Still just focusing on that question, but from the heart, like speaking it so deeply from the heart to the heart and out into the wider consciousness. And then I'm just going to play my drum and allow the sound of the drum just to take you on a dance. It's like, wow, as I feel the beat of the drum, I'm placing that question into my heart. I'm placing that question into the drum beat, and that drum beat do is carrying it over to my dog. My dog is receiving that, and the dog is, from wider consciousness through intelligence, is sending it back to me. And so as I play the drum, I'm just going to keep my eyes open just for a few moments, because I have had a few microphone issues with the drum being picked up. So trusting it will work, but just in case it doesn't, I'll just keep my eyes open so one of you can let me know if you can't hear it. But it's keeping in that place of the heart, of that question, feeling it, not thinking it, feeling it, feeling it, feeling it. And then allowing the vibration of the drum to carry your question over to your dog. And then in whatever way is to be received, whatever way you're to receive, then receive an answer. Just a really short and quick example there, but still feeling into that question, still having that openness of intuition, of accessing that intelligence, that wider consciousness, and trusting anything that you receive, and also trusting if you didn't receive, knowing that that's also perfect. But anything that you did receive, just trusting that is true and correct, whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Of like, I don't know, I saw like a statue or a symbol, or I tasted something, or I smelt something, or wow, I heard words, or someone came to me. And that's the intelligence which shows up in all manner of ways, and making a mental note of that or writing it down if it was really profound for you, something that you want to remember. So well done. And I'm just going to quickly jump onto the chat just to see if there's any questions that have come through in the chat. If there isn't, then I'm going to open up to see if there's any questions. And depending on the time and what questions we have, or if people as part of their questions want to share what they received, what question they had, what question they fell into, and what they received. So let me just quickly check on the chat. Okay, perfect. So there's no questions there. So if anybody has any questions, then please just unmute yourself, or raise your hand, and everyone's been very quiet tonight. Maybe people are making notes. And if there's no questions, then please feel free, just if it feels right, okay? If it feels right to, the question that you fell into and what you received as an experience,